This week on the Brody and Mo In-Law Show.
We've got a literal last second special guest joining us on the program tonight, the incomparable Phil Bashaw. Phil, thanks for coming back on.
This isn't his program anymore. This is Sean Miller's program. And it's almost like you can't compare the two.
My daughter just turned 2, and she has grown to be somewhat violent.
Show where we commiserate on Arizona sports, collaborate on being dads to daughters, and conversate on the pressing matters of today. And Brody, almost all 3 of those, maybe not the daughters part, but the other 2, the bookends, have come together today, right now, because literally half an hour ago, probably the most prominent figure in the University of Arizona sports world just passed away, Coach Lute Olson.
Coach Lute Olson, who we talk about the University of Arizona as being a basketball school, and it is because of Lute Olson. We have to go back and remember that the University of Arizona was not a good basketball team for a long time. It was not a good place to go. Nobody wanted to go there. And Lute made it I'm going to call Arizona, obviously I'm biased, but an elite program, able to recruit athletes, able to develop young men to drafts, to NBA players, to just building the entire culture that is the University of Arizona men's basketball program. You can obviously go back to Lute, and so it's sad today that we mourn the loss of Lute Olson.
Brody, we've got a literal last second special guest joining us on the program tonight. Just the incomparable Phil Bashaw. That is the incomparable Phil Bashaw. Phil, thanks for coming back on. We just need to.
Phil.
I think we need to celebrate this guy. We need to commiserate a little bit about what 2020 continues to do to us, especially us Arizona sports fans, apparently. And just off the top of my head, like the natural question to ask is what is the thing you're going to remember about Lute Olson the most? But I want to go in a different direction maybe and ask, how does Arizona from here continue the legacy of what Lute started? Like what should we want to see from Arizona basketball moving forward to honor who Lute was and what he did for this program?
Yeah.
Because that opens up a whole can of worms, right? Like, does that mean that we keep Sean Miller?
Yeah.
Does that mean that we fight against the sanctions coming down from the NCAA? Does that mean that we're on the right path, or should we look for something different? I don't have an answer. I'm opening it up.
That is that does open up a whole can of worms here. I mean,
maybe it's way more fun to just ask, what's your favorite Lute memory?
Yeah, that's really, and actually that's a pretty tough question too, because there's so many memories of I really got into U of A basketball when I was in high school, and it was, I got into it because my friends were into it. And I had some people that I really looked up to that used to love watching U of A basketball games. And so I started watching with them, and Lute was the coach at that time. And I watched so many great basketball teams coming up through that program, all the time I was in high school, all the time that I was going to school at U of A. Arizona basketball was always something to look forward to. You always knew you were going to be competitive. I watched us lose to Duke one year. That's a memory that I'll never forget. I remember the year where we almost beat Illinois, who was supposed to be the best team in the country. And, it was, there were a lot of great memories just watching basketball games with my friends, and Lute Olson was always a part of that. He was always the man on the sidelines, and he was always the guy that was going to bring us through. It was a big part of why I'm an Arizona sports fan. was Lute Olson, those programs that he put together, and just sort of the class act that he was. I mean, he was a part of the community. He did so much for Tucson in that program, and really made it something to be proud of. And so I don't think you ever really recreate that the way that he did it. You might have some comparable programs somewhere down the line. You might have some comparable figures in Tucson as a part of that program, but it'll never quite be the same the way that Luke did it.
Agreed. Dude, I agree. And the answer to your question, Mo, is that everybody's thinking is the classic video of Miles Simon messing up his hair when they won in 97. Like that's, like the epitome of Lute Olson and like the just pure elation of winning the national championship and bringing that championship to Tucson. That is going to be super hard to replace, maybe never replace that feeling. And I think about Lute and what he did on the court, but also once he took a step back from being the head coach to going to every game, to being on the sidelines, to cheering on the team, to be able to relinquish the reins like he did as a head coach for so long is very difficult to do. And to say that this is your team, but no matter what, I am a University of Arizona fan through and through. And I'm going to go to every game and I'm going to cheer and I'm going to root for, and I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure I am the best alumni that I can. I got to hear Lute talk at the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences world famous Dean's Burrito breakfast one time during homecoming. And when he walks in the room, you just feel a winner. That is one thing that always stuck out to me is when he entered the room, you were in the presence of a winner. And there's only a few people I think in the world that can emulate that. And that's what I think of when I think of Lute Olson is just radiating being a winner and a champion. So
yeah, there was always an air of invincibility when Lute Olson walks out on the court. It doesn't matter who's wearing the uniform. You know that your team has a chance. Right. And Brody, to your point, to piggyback on that of him still being such a critical part of U of A basketball after he left the head coaching program. I remember NAU basketball went to like a real minor postseason tournament 3 or 4 years back. Jack Murphy was the head coach at the time, who's now an assistant coach for Arizona basketball. He was an old Arizona alum. He came up through that system. He worked under Lute before he became the head coach of NAU. And this tournament doesn't even register on a national scale. Unless you know who NAU is, you don't care about this at all. And no one in Flagstaff even cares about NAU basketball. But the semifinal game that NAU made it to, it was a pretty big deal for them because they're not, it's not a sports program. It's not anything that's had success in the past. But this game was fairly well attended, and it was a big deal for NAU, but not for anybody else. And Luke came. He went to the game. He was there in Flagstaff watching that game. And I remember at the end of it, the students rushed the court because NAU actually did win and went on to the championship game. But Lute stayed for the whole thing. He went over and congratulated Jack afterwards and then just quietly left. Like, he wasn't there to see the press. He wasn't there to make a big deal about him. He was there to support his guys. And I think that's a testament to who he was and how deeply he cared about not just Arizona basketball, but the state of Arizona basketball in the grander university scheme. Like, he became good friends with Bill Frieder, who was the ASU coach at the time. They had like a really weird, funny kind of relationship. They did all those commercials together. You remember those weird Bank One commercials they do together? Anyway, that was just a side note, but it just kind of showed his approach to everything is that, yes, he cared deeply about his program, but he also was willing to kind of step out of the U of A to help the grander scheme of basketball in the state.
I didn't want to bring up the subject of basketball because, the pillar of Arizona basketball has just passed. I think we can all just trace the pillar back to Lute, but is it too quick to talk about the future of basketball at Arizona? Are we on the right track? Would Lute be happy with where we're going?
That is a good question. It's sort of hard hard to pick because he was, I mean, he was such a pillar of the Arizona, basketball community, but also he hasn't been the coach for a while. You know what I
Right.
mean? This isn't his program anymore. You know what I mean? This is Sean Miller's program, and it's almost like you can't compare the two. It's a different, it's a different program. They play on the Lute Olson court, but
one thing I think that's really cool that you brought up the Lute and Bobby Olson court. I've heard this from multiple sources, and I can't pin it back to a certain one, so you'll have to forgive me. But I heard that another testament to Lute, to naming the court after him, is that he actually didn't want the court to be named after him. He said the only way that he would put his name on it was if you included Bobby, who of course passed away before him as a result of cancer. And I think that also goes to a testament of who he was. I'm a very selfless person. I'm not in it for the glory and to see my name in lights, but I'm here because I understand that this is more important than me. The university, he had that philosophy that I am doing this because I am just genuinely passionate about the sport of basketball. I'm genuinely passionate about the city of Tucson, and I'm passionate about the University of Arizona. And he just radiated that. And to piggyback on just kind of what I said earlier, and we've all just touched on, is that when he walked in, he was a winner. I expect winning, and I expect you to do it in a way that, isn't shady, that we're going to do this as stand up as we can. And we are going to win or lose. We're going to do it the best that we possibly can. And that was something that Lute radiated. And that was one thing that I really appreciated about him and the program.
Yeah, it was, he commanded excellence. You know what I mean? It was all about, and it was an excellent program because of it.
His style of recruiting was very interesting as well. He's kind of on the forefront of this. It wasn't called one and done, but that hadn't really caught on. So let's take some guys, earlier in his career. Let's take some guys that. Let me retract. Like when Lute Olson took over at Arizona, it was not desirable. We talked about that. Like it wasn't. People weren't coming to Arizona to play basketball. He said, "Let's take these young men who are decent at basketball. Let's coach them up to become great at basketball, and let's teach you to become great men along the way." And so he's able to develop guys like Sean Elliott and Steve Kerr and these upper echelon type players to become great coaches and analysts of themselves, in and of themselves. And so much of that is with with Lute Olson, to be able to take these kind of guys and do that. And that's another style of basketball that probably doesn't translate today, where guys are one and done. I want to go and play ball for a year and I want to go pro. The game has changed. The game is so much different now. To be able to recruit, the Lute Olson ways of recruiting would not work today. It just would not work today. You have to try and go after those upper echelon guys and win. And the problem is in March, if you lose one game, you're out.
Does it not, though? Like, look at Mark Few and Gonzaga. They weren't getting guys. They weren't getting those upper echelon dudes, and now they are like a top tier program simply because Few can coach.
That does pose an interesting question, because I've heard you guys talk about before the concept of one and done, and you bring these upper echelon guys in, they stay for a year or two, and then they're gone again. But for a game like basketball, there's something to be said for continuity. There's something to be said for a group of guys playing together, for an extended period of time, and having trust in one another, sort of understanding the movement of the game and where they're going to be on the court and those types of things. I mean, and maybe that's what made this program so special was the continuity. Because I can remember back at some of my favorite players, and they were there for all 4 years. And it was really fun to watch them, over that period of time while they played in this program, and see them do well, see them go a good ways into the Final Four, and maybe even make it to the finals. So I mean, I guess that creates an interesting question. I mean, can you build a better program based on continuity rather than just raw talent?
And so to go another way, Mo, you talk about Mark Few and going into the Final Four and building this type of a program. Us as Arizona State, I won't just go to the University of Arizona, but us as a state, as fans of sports, we are incredibly short-minded. We only, again, we've talked about this, only cheer for teams that win. So when every year that Sean Miller doesn't make it to the Final Four, we get increasingly more upset. And we need to go out and get you could say Zion Williamson or the big name recruits every single year to try and make it there. Whereas in Lute, he was like, you know what? We're not going to be good for a couple years, but I guarantee you in 4 years, when all these guys stay, we're going to win the national championship. And for most of the part, he was right. We're so much, I feel like, more short-minded in that regard, to where we didn't make it. So, I'm mad. And I've been guilty of that too. I point at myself for that because I get short-minded too.
Yeah, and that's just, you're right. That's just the bent of modern collegiate basketball too. When it's just a launching pad for the NBA. I understand. Like, it's a different game. It's a different coaching mentality. It's a wildly different recruiting mentality. But when you're a coach the caliber of Lute Olson and you literally change the DNA of an entire program and put a university on the map, inevitably everyone is going to be compared to you from there on out, whether fairly or unfairly. And so every coach, including the current incumbent of that position, is going to be measured by what Lute Olson did. And that's a testament to both Lute and to the long-standing nature of what he's established here. So it just goes to prove that he's probably incomparable. Maybe we'll see something like that again. It's not going to be anytime soon. But he did something that is very rarely seen, in that he took a program that was nothing and turned it into a perennial national powerhouse. And man, what do you say other than that? Like, Lute made Arizona basketball.
Yeah, he did.
That's it. I mean, what else do you say?
Made it.
It's a blow to Arizona sports today.
So we tip of the cap. Phil, you coined this, so you can say it if you want.
The salute to Lute.
We're gonna give this one the salute to Lute. Thank you, Lute Olson, for all that you've done for Arizona sports, the city of Tucson, the state of Arizona, the sport of basketball.
And on a personal note, Lute, thanks for all the memories, man.
Thanks for not giving me an autograph in Red Lobster in 1999 when the whole team walked in. I remember, Miles Simon. Don't think I've forgotten.
Calling him out. We have like 7.5 minutes left on my Zoom. I don't know how to
Dude, upgrade your Zoom already,
I don't know how to, I don't know what.
Tap into the Brody and Mo In-Law Show deep pockets of our revenue stream.
Yeah, I know. Let's get you a sponsor.
I know. We need a sponsor. Inyati, Traeger, or Jeep. You guys need to start shelling out some money because I've spent enough for you guys. All right. I'm jumping in. I'm taking over the reins here. Can I, Mo? I don't. You can say yes or no. I'm going to.
Yeah, dude, grab them and go.
So, my daughter just turned 2, and she has grown to be somewhat violent. We'll go with that at daycare. So I need some parenting advice. First scenario, we got our first naughty gram home from daycare. Listeners need to understand that our babysitter is the sweetest person in the whole entire world. Sabrina, we love her like she was our own family, and I can't think of anybody that I would trust more with my daughter's life than her. And so for her to deliver bad news is she was good, but we had a situation, and I was like, oh yeah, what was that? She's beating up the boys. Okay. What's going on? My first reaction is, Well, did they deserve it? Like, was she standing up for herself? That's my first, like, she's standing up for herself. She's, you know,
Sure.
I don't condone violence, but like, you stand up for yourself. You stand your ground if you need to, like if somebody initiates it. She's like, no, the boys were sitting there reading a book and she took the book and hit them with it. And I was like, oh, Sadie. Oh no. Oh no. Okay. I can't get behind the beating of kids with books. Like, no, we can't do that. But I can't punish her for something at you know, when I pick her up at 4 for something she did at noon, right? Like in a 2-year-old's mind, you can't.
Sure.
She doesn't understand that something that happened 4 hours ago or whenever it happened, that those are two things that go together. So I thought it was just the boys because she had a good report home. It was like, it was only the older girls. So they got along and they played and they did their stuff. There was no boys there. So it was all good. Well, today, we fast forward to today. She gets another naughty gram home. She slapped one of the other girls who was sitting there doing her own thing across the face. She comes up and is like, Sadie slapped me. And our sitter, very, very diplomatic, was like, are you sure? Like, you know, we're working on this thing. And, you know, not, she had turned her back. Like, and she turned, you know, our sitter turns and looks, and there's a giant red mark in the shape of a hand across her face. And she's like, oh no, Sadie definitely slapped you. So I'm working through that. We're working on no hitting.
I got nothing. Yeah.
Good. So my kid's just going to brawl everybody.
Off the top of my head, Brody, the best thing I can tell you to do is, since you're struggling with connecting the dots between something that happened at noon and the discipline that would occur later at 4:30, you need to have Sadie in the room with another child while you're there so that you can apply discipline at the time of the malfeasance. That means you just need to have another kid.
Oh my God. Mo, I don't want to talk to you anymore. So this is going to be known as the Brody and Phil semi-in-law show. No,
I'm offering good advice here, Brody.
That's what everybody says. That's the problem, dude. Like, they all say that because she has single, you know, child syndrome. Like, she's not understanding why. Like, I want to read this book. Why do you have this book? I'm going to take this book and I'm going to beat you with it. We need to skip a lot of steps. Like, there are plenty of other books for you to read. This kid is enjoying their book. You don't need to read that one. So we're learning sharing. It's been tough. It's been tough. I also have thought about steering into the skid of just like, I'm going to buy her skates and hockey mitts and she's going to be the enforcer on the team. Do I just go with the boxing mix?
Also a viable option. You don't want her to practice on the other children, though.
Yeah.
She practices on like a heavy bag?
Maybe on you? You could allow her to practice on you. That'd be fair.
So I'm beat up dad.
Yeah, it's that or have another kid, man. You got to choose between those two options. That's all you got.
I don't have a better solution here, but I feel like there has to be one out there. Somebody could offer.
Now is where you chime in, Phil. Now is the point.
Maybe you go to the listeners. I don't know.
Hey, listeners, what's our other options? We have another kid. Dad gets the bleep button beat out of him, or your option.
Brody, you know Twitter. Put it on the poll. Have another kid or let Brody get beat up by a hockey mitt. Those are your options, man.
To be fair, I did ask for advice. I didn't say I wouldn't like the advice. Both are terrible options, but I guess they're options.
Yeah. So honestly, I sort of remember, I remember both my kids going through, stages where they were violent. And my daughter was a biter actually. And we got some nasty grams back where my daughter had bitten some other children, and it was like, as my daughter's my oldest, and so as like first time parents, when this stuff happens, you're like, oh my god, what are we going to do? We need to call the other parents, and like, but is that going to be awkward? I wonder if they're mad at us. I mean, are they going to, do we have insurance for this? That kind of stuff. And so,
exactly what I was thinking, dude.
Yeah, but they're learning. I mean, they're learning all the time, and so they're trying to, just like everything else, they're trying to figure out how to keep their emotions in check and that kind of stuff too. And so, it's one of those things you just have to remember. It's like, you're not doing anything wrong. It's just a constant reinforcement, you know what I mean? And saying, and making sure that they understand why they can't do things, why they can't do certain things, and, and why it's inappropriate, but yeah, I mean, it's in the short term, it's stressful, but, in the long term, they'll learn, they'll get it. They'll figure it out. It's their phases, and you'll get through them. And
I needed to hear that, Phil. Thank you, because you wonder, are you gonna figure this out? Stop hitting people. I'm going.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah.
Stop hitting. People.
No, man. You get your third note home about your daughter biting another kid and drawing blood. You start wondering, is there something that we're doing wrong here?
Oh.
Speaking of Sadie beating up kids at daycare, what's your favorite Lute Olson memory?
Yeah. So I remembered the game that stuck in my head most vividly, and unfortunately, I mean, when I was talking about Lute and all the memories I had, it's almost like the games that we lost are the ones that stick in my head, most vividly. And it's because, you were so excited, and you were there, and you were into it, and you were hoping for that last minute comeback, but in 2001, I was getting ready to graduate high school, and I remember I was actually back in Washington D.C. for I can't even remember what organization I was with at the time, but we were doing a trip back in Washington D.C. and when all of my classmates were out having a good time, I was stuck in this little dorm room watching the championship game against Duke on this tiny little TV. And I was yelling and screaming at the top of my lungs to nobody but myself, and just absolutely losing my mind. And that, I think, was one of the most prominent memories in my mind of rooting for Arizona sports, Arizona basketball, and Lute was definitely a big part of that. We had, it was the era of, Gilbert Arenas and Luke Walton and those guys. And it was, those were great teams. And, you knew all season that we had a shot at it that year, you know what I mean? And all through all through the Final Four, it was like, this is ours, this is ours for the taking. And you loved winning all of those games, and you got to the final game, and and you didn't quite get there, but you still felt good about the season. You still felt good about your team. But it was, it's disappointing to lose the championship game, but man, you just, those were some of the great memories of watching Arizona basketball, was just being so invested in your team, invested in the season, invested in that championship, so yeah, I mean, unfortunately it wasn't a win, but man, it was fun.
That's how I feel too. I think if I had to point to one of them, it's the whole 2005 team. Salim Stoudemire at point.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go with when he beat ASU in Tempe on a buzzer beater where he clearly traveled. But then later in the year, he beats Oklahoma State in the Sweet 16. And then the very next game is them versus Illinois. And they're up 16-20 with 2.5 to play and lose in overtime. Like you said, Phil, even in those games where they lose, you feel good about your team.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Channing Frye sitting on the floor at the end of overtime, just like bawling unconsolably at the end of that game. Illinois is the best team in the nation that year. You lost to the best team and you took them to overtime. It was a great game. You should have won fine. I still feel good about this team, and I know next year they're going to come back stronger. Like, that was Lute to me.
Yeah.
You know, just now, I just typed in Arizona basketball into Google, and you just get pages of Lute Olson. The impact that one man had on a university, on a town, on a state, on a sport. You got to, you go back to Lute Olson and all of the great teams that he's had, all of the legacies that he's led, the incredible work that he did, and again, taking a job that nobody wanted to build it to a powerhouse. It's just incredible. It's just incredible. What an incredible man. What an incredible legacy. And so we're really happy to have him in Tucson and to have him at the University of Arizona. And we pray for his family, and that we thank him for all that he did at U of A.
First and foremost, I want to thank Phil for literally last second, just because we texted him a selfie of ourselves being sad about Lute, was willing to jump back into this podcast with us. Phil, thanks, man. We genuinely, I appreciate it.
Thanks.
You have a life, you have a family, and you decided to hang out with us tonight. Thank you.
Well, hey, listen, I couldn't think of a better place to talk about Lute Olson memories than this podcast with you guys. So appreciate the invite.
I sent Phil the selfie of us all, sad, and he sent me the similar sad face, and I was like, all right, Phil, what are you doing in 5 minutes? And he's like, I'm joining a podcast with you. And I was like, you're the man. So thanks, Phil. Man, we appreciate it, dude.
We truly do commiserate about Arizona sports tonight.
We did.
Brody,
absolutely.
Brody, the obvious choice for the number of the night is 97. I would make you do 1997. That's pretty high. And you might have to use some weird increments. But 97, the year Lute Olson led Arizona to its first and only collegiate national championship.
Thanks, Lute. $10, $10, $10, $20, $20, $20, now $30, $30, now $40, $50, now $60, $60, $70, $70, $80, now $90, now $95, $95, $96, $96, $97, now $98, not $98, $98, 98, and I have here 98, sold it 97. Thank you, Lute Olson. 1997, you brought a national championship home to the University of Arizona, the city of Tucson, the state of Arizona. We love you. We miss you. Thank you to you. Thank you to Phil. Thank you to Mo. Thank you, Lute Olson.
Everybody, thank you for listening to the Brody and Mo In-Law Show. If you want to connect with us on Twitter, you can find us at In-Law Show. If you want to email us, you can find us at BMILS2020@gmail.com. Phil, thanks again for joining us. We might as well rename this to the Brody and Mo and Phil In-Law Show. Other than that, we'll see you all next time.
See ya.
Bye, guys.